All right, I don't know what happened, but we are back. Sorry about that, guys. It just all of a sudden said streaming is no longer available at this time. And then here we are, back again. Weird. Super weird. Um, Damn, we lost our comments. I guess I could find them from before. Um, well, I guess we could take a break here. If anyone does want to call in and have a conversation about anything that's being discussed on the video. 1999. I've watched all four at least 10 times. That's pretty epic. Yeah, if anyone wants to call in through Skype, that's my Skype ID above. I'll throw on a little bit of music here, see if we collect a little more audience before we get or anywhere if anyone wants to have a chat about any of these subjects. The Skype live ID is in the stream. Um, it's live at Travis Pangburn 3. Let's see. We're just having a quick break here. Pee break, I guess. Yeah, a lot of my videos do get demonetized, and I never know why. Sometimes I'll just be talking about like issues of racism, but I think if you have racism, if you speak of issues of racism, it automatically gets demonetized, and you have to appeal it, which I think is dumb. I think people should be encouraged to talk about these issues. Yeah, a lot of people said they liked the second discussion more. It definitely got more fiery, but this first one was very important to establish groundwork for the following 3 conversations. Kurt, I am revisiting these conversations now because I haven't done a live stream with everyone and a live watch through, so I wanted to do that and encourage some discussion because I think these are very important conversations between Sam and Jordan, and I wanted to give them a bit more air. Basically, I haven't had an opportunity to do it yet, and I have some time now. But the gods of YouTube are smiting me right now. Yeah, and those on Facebook. Oh, I was going to give you guys the actual link. Okay, it's right here. No, that's no good. That's no good. Let's give them this one. So those on Facebook, you can come and chat with all of us on YouTube if you just use the link I just provided. Hoping that we don't get shut down by YouTube again. Did everyone go pee? Oh yeah. If anyone's feeling like doing a little bit of farming through the comment section of this video, let's see who can find the funniest comment. There are some gold comments under there. Lots about Ben Stiller. What else we got? Blair says he was at night 2. Awesome. You're welcome. It was a great event. Really successful. NYBSFP. That's an interesting name. I think your idea is great. Discussion via the comments on the videos isn't very efficient. Yes. You know, going through the doing the Facebook conversations, talking about them, I think it's valuable. It might not be the most exciting thing. Maybe I'll find some ways to spice it up. I think in the last comment, someone complimented me on my beautiful hat. I think they were probably being a dick and being like, huh, nice hat. But whatever. I'll take those punches. Dodge them. Rope-a-dope. Okay. Let's see if I can do a fade out of this music even though it's solo. No, I didn't fade it. It just clicked right off. There wasn't enough room for me to fade it, guys. Fine. Did I stop though? Oh no, I didn't stop. Okay. Let's get cracking here again. Thanks for coming back. We'll see if we get in more shit by YouTube for keeping this rolling. Breaking the law. I don't know. I guess it's breaking the YouTube law to have Jordan Peterson in the friggin' title. Maybe I'll call him Jordan Peterson next time or something. Or maybe it's Sam Harris. Maybe YouTube has added Sam Harris to the bannable algorithm. Okay. We should have the same settings. So let's rock this out.
They were actually on the losing side of a theological argument. And it would be much better, I think you would agree, if one of the 10 commandments had been, don't keep slaves. You know, I mean, there's certainly one we could swap out for that one. And so that way, it would have been much easier for Christians to have fought against slavery. And it's much harder for Muslims, frankly, to fight against it now.
So basically, Sam's putting a lot of pressure on Jordan here to with a pretty good example of, okay, wouldn't it have been better to say you don't own other people as property? Like this is immoral to do, because I think you'd be hard pressed to make a any kind of moral argument as to why one should own another person as property. So Sam really is applying the pressure pretty early on in this first round of 4.
The problem is that there's a point I made, I think, in my first book, is that the doors leading out of this kind of fundamentalism don't open from the inside. They get bashed open from the outside. And it's humanism and it's secularism and it's scientific rationality that has exerted such pressure, such winnowing pressure on Christianity, now for multiple centuries, that's why we're not encountering the Christians of the 14th century on a daily basis. And we are essentially encountering Muslims of the 14th century, not only in the Middle East, but in our own societies, in terms of their intuitions about how we should all live, right? I mean, the fact that 0% of UK Muslims think homosexuality is acceptable, right? 0%. I mean, there's almost no question you can come up with where we could poll this society and say, do you think that the a lizard king is living in the Oval Office? You never get a 0% response to any poll question, right?
Is Donald Trump the lizard king?
But if you ask Muslims on the streets of London, is homosexuality...
Look at how stoic Jordan is here. Just not even cracking a smile here. He is in the zone. Look at that. I wish I could zoom in. I wish I was smart enough on this program to zoom in on Jordan's face right now. Epic. Okay, we got a couple comments here. Troy Mueller says, isn't Harris a Jew? Like, in what sense? Like a cultural Jew? I think Brett Weinstein's definitely a cultural Jew. Yeah, we've spoken about it before. Michael Marihol says, I want to see Matt D versus Jordan P and talk about gender differences. Yeah, that would be very interesting. It's a good suggestion. Kurt says, who do you think, quote, won, unquote? Who do I think won? Well, I think Jordan's concept of a metaphorical God is the concept of a metaphor that he finds very helpful and he believes has been very helpful to some in human history. And I would agree that can be the case. But Jordan should not be proposing this as, no, God does exist because he exists. It exists as a metaphor. And the way to realize that metaphor through Christianity is the way to do it, not through Islam. It's like, well, you can go through many different doctrines and find things that are going to help people, moral lessons and stuff in ancient texts. They don't even have to be religious texts. I think this is a stepping stone to just admitting that you're an atheist, what Jordan is doing. Atheism stands against the claim, is a rejection of the claim that gods exist, and Jordan seems to be of the position that gods don't exist in the scientific sense, where they actually exist in reality. But that has been the claim of God. That's what gods are when we're talking about gods. We're not talking about the story of God, because that seems to be what Jordan is talking about here. So Sam wins, and well, obviously we're going to watch all of these, and Jordan's going to have his sound points and fair points in these debates for sure. But like I've told Jordan, and I truly believe he is making a great argument for people to leave religious fundamentalism and come into this world of metaphorical truth about God, which I think is actually bringing them to accept that they are atheists, in the sense that they don't accept that a God actually exists in the scientific sense. let's see what else. Tory Hunter says, "Thou shalt not keep slaves" can be extrapolated from "thou shalt not kill," because it's only at the threat of death that one can keep a slave. Silly Sam. Yeah, I don't, no. Go read Exodus 21. Exodus 21 for slavery in the Bible. Um, and that was by Tory Hunter. Chad Farmer. Nah, dude, slaves are like when you owe your life to someone. Now, that's not the kind of slaves they're talking about. Exodus 21 in the Bible, go and read it. It explicitly sanctions slavery, the rules in which how you own your slave, what you can do with them, beat them as long as they don't die within a few days after. I don't know why it started hiding Chad Farmer's comments here. I don't know why YouTube does that. So like you become their squire and shit like that. No, that's not slavery. That's not the kind of slavery that's being talked about in Exodus 21. Kurt Jerwitz says atheism doesn't say God doesn't exist, but rather that God, as we've described her, can't be right. My philosophy teacher. Well, no, atheism is just the rejection of the claim that that gods exist. So if you claim, well, the Christian Yahweh exists, then someone says, "Oh, okay, let me see your evidence for it." And if the evidence doesn't give you reasonable justification to believe in that claim that a God exists, and you lack the belief, that is atheism. That's all it is. There's no tenets, dogma, nothing like that. NYBSFP says, "I'd love to see Alan Watts moderate." Well, I think maybe Alan Watts would be a good moderator, but Brett did do quite a good job here, and we're obviously going to see more of his talent coming up. Thanks for engaging, everyone. Make sure you give a thumbs up to this stream as we're going. It really helps more people to see it. Really helps with the channel. Subscribe. Hit the notification bell. Yes. Watch our recent documentaries and all the new content that's coming out. I've been having a lot of fun doing it. Let me know what you think of it. Let's get back to the video. Oh, and if you want to support the channel, go over to patreon.com/pangburn. Really helps a lot. Even $1 per creation helps us big time. Or you can send a donation if you want through PayPal to pangburncontest@gmail.com. Okay, enough plugs. Let's get back into the hardcore action here.
Sexuality morally acceptable, apparently you can find no one who says it is. That's shocking, and it's not an accident, right? And it would be much easier if the book actually said, you can love anyone you want, and it's not a problem.
It is shocking, but I think there's a reason that you keep finding yourself at Islam, which may be the slowest to update for reasons that may be ancient. But I wanted
to.
Well,
that is a useful.
I can do it for Christianity. I want to make the point as cleanly and as undistractedly as possible. But yeah, it's true. I have the same kinds of concerns about Christianity or Mormonism or Scientology or anything else. And the point is they're all different. And there's no reason to be, because Islam, to take the case where it's fine, Islam doesn't represent any impediment to stem cell research, right? Because
Can you imagine being in the room with Ben Affleck while he was watching Sam talk about this? I wonder if he has changed his view of Sam Harris after he's actually listened to his stuff and not just gone off what people have told him of him being this terrible racist Islamophobe. I wonder if he's changed his position. Has anyone ever seen anything from Ben Affleck of him saying maybe I overreacted a little bit? I just haven't looked for it. Maybe he has. I don't know why I keep bringing up Ben Affleck. I just have this I can just see this triggered face of Ben Affleck while he's listening to this. It amuses me.
Just don't think that the fertilized ovum is immediately ensouled. It waits 40 days or 80 days or 120 days, depending on what hadith you believe. So it's just that never came up when we were all complaining about how religion, in this case Orthodox Judaism and Christianity in the States, was posing an impediment to embryonic stem cell research.
Okay,
hold
so, on. I wanted to ask you a clarifying question, too.
Yeah, sure.
Same level. Would you agree that there are things written into these religious texts that are unambiguously unacceptable viewed through a modern lens, and not because the texts are so complicated that we have misunderstood something, but there are things that are just written in there that we now understand to be wrong?
Okay, so the first thing...
Okay, so this was an excellent question by Brett. An excellent question. It puts the heat on Jordan to deal with the terribleness that exists in religious texts. Let's see what happens.
The first thing I would say is that we have to be very careful about equating all the religious texts. And I do actually think that you are careful about that. But that's something we can have a discussion about a little bit later.
I agree with you there.
So because, for a lot of my life, I would say, more interested in the universal truths expressed in religious belief across different cultures. But I've become more and more aware of the important distinctions between the religious cultures, maybe in the last 10 years. So it isn't clear to me that you can just throw all religious dicta in the same bucket. And there's complex reasons for that. So, and one question, which you kind of sent at Sam already, is, do you see a hierarchy of...
So Jordan just made an interesting claim there. You can't throw all these religious, I guess, ideas or pieces of the religion into the same bucket. All claims, it doesn't matter where they're coming from, they have to go through the veil of skepticism. Okay? It doesn't matter. You apply the same level of skepticism to an Islamic claim than you do to a Christian claim. It doesn't matter what you believe these doctrines have done for people, positive or negative. You got to view them through the same lens when it comes to skepticism and verifying the claim or throwing it away.
Unacceptability between different religious doctrines. I mean, and I would say
Yes.
you acted... Okay, fine. So, okay. Now, but here's an interesting issue. And I think we're starting to zero in on... We've covered what we agree on, a lot of it. But there's another thing.
Answer Brett's question, because I think it was a good one.
Sorry. I answered the first half of it, but the second part is, I think that...
So Sam rightfully, very strongly wanted to hear Jordan's actual response deal with the nasty claims that exist in religious texts. And Sam didn't let him go off kilter there.
This is where I'm going to sound like a postmodernist, which I really hate. I would say sentence by sentence, yes, you're correct. Paragraph by paragraph, perhaps. But here's the problem with complicated texts, especially ones that actually constitute narratives. So imagine this. So imagine you're at a movie, and it's a movie with a twist at the end. And so the entire movie is set up to make you think one particular way and to have one set of experiences. But when you put the twist in at the end, it changes the entire structure. And so this is one of the complex problems that actually led to the rise of postmodern interpretations of literature, which...
Okay, so Jordan just used the analogy of a film. So is there something that could be said at the end of this film to enlighten us to how it was in fact okay from a moral standpoint to own others as property, as explicitly sanctioned in Exodus 21? Or, stoning people to death who work on the Sabbath, a lot of anti-scientific beliefs. I just don't see this to be the case, and let's see if he further gets into this a little more. But what happens in the end? Oh, it was all good that I was held as a slave because it was in fact better for my well-being. Well, I just don't see that as a compelling argument. Let's see what we got. Tori Hunter says, I'm not claiming that the Bible doesn't have passages that seem to condone slavery. Seem to condone or does condone? A straightforward read of Exodus 21 gives you the rules at how to own a slave and who you can own a slave and what you can do with your slave. So I don't think it seemed to condone slavery. I think that's rather apologetic to suggest that. Only suggesting that if read properly, the Ten Commandments don't allow for slavery. The Ten Commandments don't allow for slavery. Well, they don't ban slavery in the Ten Commandments, so I don't understand. I don't understand how you can get to that conclusion. Maybe elaborate on that a little more. Okay, yeah, and then we get into indentured servitude instead of slavery. Owning another person as property, as explicitly sanctioned by Exodus 21, is immoral. Now, if someone could demonstrate how that can be moral, have at her. But you have to demonstrate that that is, or else this is an immoral passage. All right, let's continue on here.
Which is that if you take a complex narrative, there's a very large number of ways of interpreting it, and it isn't self-evident which of those are canonically correct. And we can deal with that horrible issue later, but it's a good objection, and it's true. And what it does is it makes these sorts of things quite complicated, because in the Bible is a series of books, and they had influence on one another, and they were sequenced with a very complex editorial process. And there's actually a developmental narrative that links all the chapters together. And what that means, this is at least, I'm going to speak from the perspective, or in terms of analysis of the Christian Bible. What it means is that you have to read the beginning as if it's also influenced by the end, which is what, by the way, and in case you think that I'm weaseling around here, and I'm not.
In case you think I'm weaseling around here, and I'm not.
Is that that's exactly what you do every time you read any story, any work of fiction. You say, well, you're not claiming that the Bible is a work of fiction. It's like, that's just a cheap objection. That's not my point.
But according to Jordan's worldview, I believe he does think that the Bible is a work of fiction. And I know he would hate describing it in that way because it holds so much value to him, but isn't this essentially what he is saying?
The point is that it's a narrative. And everything in a narrative is conditioned by all the rest of the things in the narrative. And it's well known, like if you're a screenwriter, for example, there's an old dictum, I don't remember who generated it, was one of the great Russians, that if there's a rifle lying on a table in the first scene, that it better be used by the end of the second scene, or it shouldn't have been there at all. So there's this coherence.
I'm looking for the rifle in your answer to this question, though,
yeah,
because I want it to be used.
My point is that it isn't reasonable to take a single sentence out of a coherent narrative and say that stands on its own, or it's rarely reasonable, because you have to interpret the word in the sentence and the sentence in the paragraph and the paragraph in the chapter and the chapter in the context of the entire book. You have to do that. Now, you could object, and reasonably so, that there are some sentences that are so blatant that you can't use context to paraphrase them, let's say, but I think you also have to give the devil its due. The Christian Bible is a developmental narrative, and the beginning has to be read in light of the end. And is it a fact?
Okay, well,
so what does that do to Moses' laws of war? This is not a narrative. This is instructions about what to do when you invade a foreign land. If you intend to take over that land, you kill everybody, right? There are other rules in there about killing husbands and taking the wives for
Yeah, the
yourself.
Old Testament's a brutal document.
Absolutely brutal. And so my point would be, I don't know that reading that portion in light of the end, even if you call the end the New Testament, I don't know that it changes Moses' laws of war and their acceptability in
Well,
any modern
hypothetically, if you
context.
take the New Testament seriously, it does, because it's a document that supersedes it. And I think there's actually technical reasons
But
why
it doesn't
supersedes
supersede it on every point. I mean, this is the problem. Slavery is a very straightforward case.
I just saw a comment. Sean Spiritual Revolutionary says you could say prostitutes are modern day sex slaves, and they are not. Yeah, they're not. They're not slaves. Sorry, I thought you were making a different claim there. They're making big bucks, and they are not. They are not owned by someone else as property.
Because clearly the Bible thumpers of the South who were defending slavery with reference to the text felt they were on firm ground. And I would invite anyone to read what the New Testament and the Old Testament say about slavery to see that they were on fairly firm ground, that the balance of the honest reading was on the side of clearly we can keep slaves, right? Jesus never envisioned a world without slavery, and he admonished slaves to serve their masters well and to serve their Christian masters especially well.
The English Protestants wouldn't have agreed with that because, like I said, they were at the forefront of the fight against slavery.
Okay, but
I think
they
there was
were
a
clearly
range
influenced by something outside the text, and this is, again, you're making this harder than it is, and my concern is why. Right?
Well, I don't think I am, Sam, because I think that the fundamental message in the New Testament, for example, is that
so
each
then you acknowledge that the
individual
Old Testament, so Jews are in possession of a book that has some diabolical passages that would be better left out. You're not going to offend me. I'm Jewish.
It's not like look in the Old Testament itself, in the Jewish Bible. There's also the seeds of the same tension. So, for example, there's a tension, and this should be a tension that's of interest to you because you've stated quite clearly in your book, in the Moral Landscape, that you don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater with regards at least to religious phenomenology. You said that, for example, I still consider the world's religions to be mere intellectual ruins maintained at enormous economic and social cost, but now I understood that important psychological truths could be found in the rubble. Well, I'm trying to find the important psychological truths in the rubble. But we have to decide also if we agree about that. Like, are there important psychological truths to be found in the rubble?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay,
But the problem with Revelation, this notion of Revelation, this notion that some books weren't written by smart people, they were written by God, confines you to taking the whole text, even though this text was cobbled together over centuries, and for whole centuries, some books were in the New Testament and then they got thrown out centuries later, and some books weren't in and then got put in. So it's an all too human process that got us these books in the first place. But once they were set, the believers imagine that you're stuck with every passage. And there are passages in the Old Testament that tell you to stone a girl or a woman who's not a virgin on her wedding night, take her to her father's doorstep and stone her to death, right? And where you find...
We can probably agree that those are wrong. So there's another point of agreement.
But you don't have to read the book to the end to know that it's wrong. I mean, you can get that from the paragraph.
That's an important point by Sam there. You don't... this is kind of an eradication of what Jordan said before. You go through that book, applying your skepticism and reason and critical thinking when a claim is made that you should do something like stone your daughter to death if she's not a virgin on her wedding day. You apply your moral standard to that. You don't just believe what the book tells you to do. So I think that just eradicates what Jordan was saying about, something in the end of the book unveiling that, oh, this was actually a wrong thing to do, or this was a correct thing to do, because you held your daughter within the law. Either way, it's like you don't have to wait that long. You can actually look at this situation and be like, oh, it's not in the best interest of my daughter's well-being to bash her head in with a rock because she will no longer be being anymore.
Yeah, but that isn't what I said. I didn't say you had to read to the end of the book to know that it's wrong. I said that you needed to read to the end of the book to contextualize those statements within the whole. I didn't say that you needed to read.
There's no exculpatory context to those kinds of statements, and that's a problem.
Well, there is in the Old Testament. There's a real tension, and this is, I think, the tension that would be of interest to you. Is there's a tension between the dogmatic and the prophetic traditions, and I think to the degree that you're interested in religious phenomenology, you find yourself on the side of the prophetic tradition. And the prophetic tradition has implicitly in it, what would you call, an implicit damnation of those dogmatic, those cruelly dogmatic rules. You see that emerge all the time in the prophetic tradition.
Arguably in Christianity. I think.
No, in Judaism, it's clearly there in the Old Testament.
Okay, anyone, I'm just going to say right now, if anyone's interested in, just remind you, if you're interested in calling in and having a quick exchange of ideas, you can get on Skype and add me at Travis Pangburn 3, send me a note, and I'd be happy to have you call in and we can do this live on the air. Remind you guys to follow me on Twitter and follow the Pangburn page on Facebook. We have Twitter is at the Pangburn. That's where you'll find me. And Facebook is at Pangburn Inspire. That's our main Pangburn page where all the discussions take place. And I see you guys are getting into it in the chat here. That's awesome. Keep that rolling. But yeah, anyone wants to call in, feel free. You can do that through Skype. And if anyone's interested at going through the comment section, finding some hilarious comments, quote them and put them in the chat here. Again, anyone over on Facebook, if there's anyone there. Oh, there's a conversation happening here. If there's anyone there over on Facebook, jump over onto the YouTube feed if you want. That's where all the action is. But let's keep rolling. Who wants to call in? Who wants to have a conversation about metaphorical gods?
With the distinction between the
I was going once again to Islam, but every prophetic, the notion of prophecy is dangerous and worth worrying about. The idea that any ancient book contains in it a perfect description of rightly interpreted, however difficult to interpret it. If you're only smart enough, you could extract from this text a perfect window onto the future, right? And that whole generations of people have lived by the lights of this cockamamie idea. Right, that the world is going to end and its ending is going to be glorious. Right, this is at the center of most eschatologies. It's just that when the wheels come off totally, right, that's on some levels the best thing that's ever going to happen because it's showing you that in this case Jesus is going to come back and throw the sinners into a lake of fire. And I've read to the end of the book. It's pretty scary at the end as well. Revelation is
no kidding. Well, that's a really good objection. But, like when I did my lectures on the Bible last year, I said that they provided a psychological take on the biblical lectures. And that's what I'm going to attempt to maintain here. Because I don't believe that I'm qualified to make fundamental metaphysical statements. But the scene that's delimited out at the end of Revelations, that's a very interesting book read psychologically. Because it's very complicated.
This is. We should talk about.
Well, let me just address that. I'll only take a minute to do it, and I'll try to be succinct. So there's an idea that's expressed in that book is that it's something like things are always falling apart in a fundamental manner. It's built into there's an apocalyptic element to human life. We fail in small ways and we fail in catastrophic ways, and everything that we have we lose and we die. So and societies come to an end. There's an apocalyptic element built into the structure of human reality. And part of what's revealed in that strange book at the end, which is like a hallucinogenic nightmare in some sense, is that the hero is born at the darkest point in the journey. And it's a psychological truth, and it's very, very apt, because at the darkest point, this is also why Christ is born near the darkest time of the year from a metaphysical perspective. There's an idea there that when things fall apart, that's the time for the birth of the hero. And the hero in Revelation is also the place where truthful speech most clearly manifests itself, because in the Christian tradition, Christ is identified with truthful speech. And so the notion there is that redemption under apocalyptic conditions is to be found in the revelation of truthful speech, which is something that you actually believe.
Well, I believe in truthful speech, but I also believe that you can play this kind of interpretive game with almost any text. This way of
But
thinking.
then you could do it with the world, Sam, and that wreaks havoc with your value from facts argument.
No, actually, I didn't hear what you just said. What was that?
Well, I said you can make exactly the same objection with the world of facts. Is there's an infinite number of facts, and there's an infinite number of potential interpretations, and so tracking the pathway from the fact to a value is actually impossible. It's the same argument with regards to biblical interpretation.
We should talk about that, but that I don't think that's a good analogy. There are more and less plausible interpretations of any situation, any data, and any text, arguably. But the problem is that you can read into any story some apparently meaningful set of psychological insights, which...
But you can do that with any set of facts, too.
Well, no. I mean, there are certain things you can't over-interpret to your heart's content and come out any way you choose. My point is that
that was a sharp dig by Sam. Interpret facts to your heart's content and have it come out the way that you want. I think he was taking a pretty big dig at Sam there, or at Jordan.
First of all, this is why fundamentalism always has an edge over more sophisticated theology, because the sophisticated theology is in most cases inspired by a more and more modern recognition that, well, we can't read it literally because it either makes no sense or it makes barbaric sense, right? So we have to get away from the literal.
Are you guys literally talking about space aliens in the comment? Where did this digression begin? Okay. Okay, there's crazy talk of space aliens happening. Nice. Air Jordan says, Sam comes off condescending this entire discussion. Condescending. I don't think so. What is your evidence that he's being condescending? He's definitely throwing some jabs and joking around with the subject, definitely, but I don't think there's any problem with that. I think if you go by that standard, one of the greatest speakers I think of all time, Christopher Hitchens, you could say that he was condescending in every single live appearance that that ever took place with him. Travis, you see CNN reporting on the UFO footage captured by a military pilot? Yeah, I'll take a look at it. Yeah, but UFO just means unidentified flying object, right? It's not a testament to anything to do with alien life form or anything like that. Just because something's unidentified, it doesn't really give us any characteristics or lead us to any conclusions as to what that thing is. Yeah, I would say it's just Sam's style, Air Jordan. It's yeah, and I mean, there's very robust styles. People say the same thing about Michael Shermer and guys like that as well. So, I think Jordan gets that criticism as well. But I think both these guys give and take a little bit here. Okay, we're going to go for 10 more minutes in this stream, and then we're going to call that a session. And I think what we'll do is start up again tomorrow at the 1 hour mark and finish off. And again, have a thought before we hit tomorrow. If there's anything you want to talk to live on the air, don't be shy. I've had a couple people add me on Skype here, but it looks like they're going to bow out of having a conversation tonight. But yeah, so TMWHB, everyone knows that, Travis. The pilot explains that he sees what he sees in the video and how it doesn't act like any vehicle known to man. Right. So it would be an argument from ignorance to then claim that it was something else because we don't have an understanding about it. What we can say for now is, I don't know. That means it's an unidentified flying object. Sean, Spiritual Revolutionary, says, I'll be there tomorrow. Awesome. Would be happy if you called in to have a conversation. Okay. Final 10-minute stretch here.
And the more you get away from the literal, the more you are unconstrained by the text, and you can just broadcast on it anything you want to put there. And so, you know, the literal, there's no...
I think everyone started discussing UFOs right back when I asked if Trump was a lizard person. Good God.
question that most generations of Christians who read Revelation expected the world to end in some literal sense of this kind of phantasmagoria. I mean, there was going to be a beast, and it was. I mean, this. It's, undoubtedly they thought this was going to happen in their own time, under Rome, but this is if you're going to go purely literary on any of these texts, on some level you're playing tennis without the net. You're unconstrained by the text, and you can do with it more or less anything you want.
Isn't that argument working at cross purposes with your other argument about dogma?
Because it's always tempting. First of all, there are lines that do not announce.
Looking forward to it, Sean. I'm looking forward to the wrath of the divine.
That they're susceptible to that interpretation. I mean, yes, you can. You can say, listen, Allah does not want us to cut the hands off of thieves. He just, he.
And if you look at Jordan now, it looks like he's having a brain aneurysm. Something is bothering him.
He meant cut the hand of their volition rather than their actual hands, right? So you're constraining them rather than cutting. Now, sure, undoubtedly there was some Muslim somewhere who wants to interpret it that way, but it gets harder and harder the clearer the line is. And the problem with all of these texts is that there are so many principles.
One thing I have to say too, it might seem like I'm being a little hard on Jordan, and I love Jordan. I think that Jordan is a great man, great thinker, insanely intelligent, and I agree with almost everything he has to say. On the God topic, I think he's trying to defend a nearly indefensible position, and I think it takes some serious gymnastics and thought pretzels to try and even build any kind of reasonable argument against what Sam is saying and claiming here. So I think he's trying his damnedest, and I think Jordan is thinking on the fly too about this a bit, and which is great. I think that's good for these conversations. I think Sam has the easy job here for sure, 100%.
Read Revelation any way you want. It is still a problem that it is perfectly rational on the basis of reading that text to expect the world to end and for Jesus to be the only savior of it. Therefore, if you happen to be born a Hindu or born a Muslim or born a Jew who doesn't recognize Jesus to be the Messiah, you are screwed for all eternity.
It's a funny thing, though. I mean, it's a strange thing, let's say, that one of the things we already agreed on, as far as I can tell, is that the antidote to pathological dogmatism is free, truthful expression, something like that. Is that?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
But one of the things I would say that's absolutely crucial to Christianity in particular is the notion that the thing that's redeeming is exactly that, and it doesn't matter, so it's universal truth. Now, if we both agree on that, the idea that the free expression of truthful speech is the antidote, let's say, both to nihilism and to totalitarianism, then the notion that that might be embodied in something like the Word, which is truly, I think, the deepest of Christian ideas, how is that not the same claim? Now, let me elaborate it a little bit more completely. So here's the strange thing. First of all, I agree with you, by the way, about the danger of flying off the text, right? About as you move away from the text, your interpretation gets less and less constrained. And I think it's also the same danger as moving away from the facts, which is, I think, why you want to ground values in facts. So I get that argument, and I think it's accurate. But here's something strange, is that this notion that redemption is to be found in truthful speech is actually embodied in Christian mythology, let's say, as a personality and not as an idea.
I'm seeing some great comments here. Tori Hunter says, Sam does have the easy job. All he has to say is religion is bad because dogma. He's more dogmatic than your average Southern Baptist preacher. Who's more dogmatic? Sam is? That doesn't make any sense, if that's what you're saying. Chad Farmer says, Joshua Jung, chill the fuck out, dude. Now, this is a good question by Michael So, SEO. What's more likely to exist, God or a fairy? You know, you can use Santa Claus in this example as well. And if someone goes down the road to say, oh, well, there's more evidence that God exists than fairies. Nah. No, that's special. There's so many fallacious things happening there that there isn't a shred of evidence for either of them. So neither one's more likely than the other. Yeah, and just to be clear, atheism does not claim that gods do not exist. That would be adopting a burden of proof. Atheism is they don't believe the claim that gods do exist. And if someone says, asks you, do God exist as an atheist, you say, I don't know. That's just, they haven't been proposed. Air Jordan 1573, thanks so much for commenting. I think Tori meant Sam seems close-minded, and we can't prove or disprove either. Yeah, Sam's not close-minded to any claims that Jordan's making here. He's responding to the claims from a skeptic's perspective. And I'm not saying that Sam's going to be perfect this whole discussion, but that's what's been happening so far. Yes, we do not. This is the point, Michael. So we don't know that fairies don't exist. We don't know that. But the default position is we don't know that they do, because there is no evidence and we haven't discovered them yet, if there are even any out there. So a-fairyism is the atheist to fairies position. Lack of belief in something is the default position. It just is. We're not born with beliefs. We learn them and we become convinced to believe something.
It's actually something that you embody and act out. It's not just an idea. And that's why there's an emphasis on the idea of the embodiment of the word in flesh. It's a very sophisticated idea. I mean, it's an insanely sophisticated idea. So, and there's one more thing.
Okay, wait a second. Sean, Spiritual Revolutionary, says, God is a metaphor for the ultimate intelligence that scientists cannot understand, but religious people feel. So you have to demonstrate that claim with evidence. So how do you know that God is a metaphor for the ultimate intelligence that scientists cannot understand, but religious people feel? Science is the way that we understand everything. You can literally build a scientific model for anything. And that's how we verify if something is actually there or not. We can even build a scientific model of love. Michael So, you said Santa Claus does not exist because Santa Claus is imaginary and a fictional character. If you're going to make that claim, you have to you're adopting the burden of proof. That's going to be an unfalsifiable claim. The unfalsifiable claims are essentially useless. Okay, there's a lot being chatted about there. Sean says science and religion are two sides of the same coin. Sean, if you're gonna call in, I will wait to talk to you live if you're interested tomorrow. That would be great.
Look, you've made the case, and I hope we can really get to this, because this is the really tough part of our discussion, I think, is that you want to ground the world of values in something that's true. We could say objectively true, but let's just say true for a minute. And I share that desire, but the problem is that I can't see, and you actually state this in your book, I can't see how you can interpret the world of facts without an a priori interpretive structure. And this is an old philosophical claim. It's not unique to me. It's the claim of Kant, for example, that you can't get directly from the fact to the value because there's an interpretive framework that mediates between you and the facts. So first of all, I'd like to know if you accept that proposition. And then the second question would be, if you do accept the proposition, then what's your understanding of the nature of the interpretive framework? Because I think it's best understood, at least in part, as a personality, or as a story for that matter. So,
well, I think our intuition of truth, the intuition that there's a difference between fact and fiction, or fact and fantasy, the intuition that we live in relationship to a common reality about which our understanding can converge, provided we're looking in the same direction with the same tools.
Captain Laserhawk says, unfortunately, Pangburn is himself locked into a belief structure and therefore locks himself out of any possible likelihood to find the true nature of the universe. If you're going to make that claim, you have to demonstrate it. All I require is enough evidence to reasonably justify belief in a claim. So if you're going to make a claim about the nature of the universe, just like physicists do and as scientists do, cosmologists, they build models based on the evidence of reality. So that is science. So that is the way we come to understand what is actually going on in reality. And there's no getting outside that. You can't just think something up about reality and say, well, what if there's actually fairies governing everything we see outside of space and time beyond our detection? Well, that's an interesting idea or a screenplay, but we don't have any evidence to lead us there. And that doesn't mean that it's up to me to prove that it's not that way, because then we're just talking about unfalsifiability. But yeah, I mean, prove your claim if you're going to make that claim. What am I locked out? How have I locked myself out of any possible likelihood to find the true nature of the universe? And also, why do you think we already haven't found out the true nature of the universe? Just because we don't know the first cause? I mean, that would be a pretty weak argument, I think.
I think it's certainly deeper than religion. It's not best captured by stories. Even if you could, as a matter of historical fact, point to its roots in story and myth and religion, that's not an argument that it's now in the 21st century best captured by story and myth and religion. I think it is a fundamental intuition to which our sanity, both personally and intersubjectively, is anchored. I mean, to lose a sense of objective reality is to lose the platform on which you can communicate with anyone and or rationally expect anything to happen a moment from now. To think that your memory represents something about a prior state of the world and your beliefs represent something about a possible state in the future, all of this is anchored to a sense that there's a difference between knowing something really and just imagining it, right? There's a difference between perception and hallucination. All of these distinctions are born of this intuition. I think we do have, clearly, we have fundamental intuitions which are either impossible to analyze or can be analyzed with respect to only other intuitions, which we deem more rudimentary, upon which everything else we do as a matter of knowledge gathering and sense making is built. So the intuition that 2 + 2 makes 4, right? You at some point you learn basic arithmetic, and you learn what addition is, and it's demonstrated to you with objects. And you're shown you take 2 apples, and you take 2 more apples, and then you have 4 apples. Look, just count them. The intuition that can be generalized to any 4 objects, right? That it's not just a fact about apples, right? This is something that we are clearly.
Vargonian is correct here, Michael. You should just stop for a sec and listen to what Vargonian is saying. The point here is that if I'm to make the claim that invisible fairies are flying around my head and you just can't see them, you can't prove that claim false. It's unfalsifiable. I can keep creating. You can come in and measure with an instrument that you claim is a measuring instrument to measure if there is anything flying around. Then I just say, well, no, they are undetectable to you or any instrument. This is the same claim that this is the same claim as a God, an unfalsifiable God, outside of our detection. Well, how would you know that something is there outside of our detection if we can't detect it?
Designed to have. There are places where it might break down, right? It might break down.
Oh, Sean, Spiritual Revolutionary says, prove love. Love is a label for a collection of different emotions, and it's a very broad term that can be used in different examples, but we can build a scientific model to show what we mean by love. For instance, we may look at a tiger cub being taken care of by its mother. We might say, oh, see, it protected it. This is a demonstration of what we call love, even though someone else might say, oh, well, I don't think that's love. I think that's just more instinctual, and it's doing it for its own pleasure. And then I would argue, well, I think we're all pleasure-driven beings, and we all are doing things for pleasure. But you can build a model for love easily. Just try to think of how you would build a model to prove love.
At the quantum level, it might break down in areas where our intuitions fail. We recognize those failures in science and mathematics by recourse to other intuitions, which again are unanalyzable. But so there is just this fact that we do pull ourselves up by our bootstraps, and that's not embarrassing. I mean,
okay, so what's the difference between and I'm not trying to trap you here. I'm seriously not. So there might be mathematical intuitions, a prioris, let's say. Kant identified time and space as a priori intuitions.
Right.
But I think there's a third category of a priori intuitions that are in fact stories, or their personalities or stories. So let me give you an example. So I'm going to do a quick rereading of the moral landscape. So because, see, you talk about G.E. Moore's argument of infinite regress.
Okay, I think we'll, before Jordan gets into, I'll backtrack a little bit here. So we'll remember he is about to offer some refutations to the moral landscape. Yeah, I think that was great. We got through a lot of material there. I really do think there's some. This is a great example as to how discourse should take place, and I think this is. I think a lot of people are like, oh, what would this have been like uh, if uh, if Brett wasn't there? I think it would have been fine. I don't think it would have been like the podcast. I think the podcast that Jordan and Sam tried to do. I think they both learned a lot about uh, when you're talking about something that is a new foreign concept like metaphorical truth, the belief that a metaphorical God exists. I think they were both ill prepared to deal with each other's. Uh, I don't know why YouTube blocks everything out, but um, I forgot what I was saying. Sean says, Pangburn, you cannot prove your wife loves you. Well, yes, you can, depending on what your definition of love is. You can say, okay, this is my definition of love. Has my wife shown me these qualities? It's a simple model of understanding. And then Sean says, I will come back tomorrow with a full on spiritual assault on you, Pangburn. Okay, dude. Awesome. Awesome. Well, I think we got some great. You guys have been awesome, engaging. Make sure you guys all like the stream, please. It helps more people see it. Please subscribe. Please hit the notification bell. Gonna have a lot of new awesome content coming your guys' way. Send us messages through Facebook at other things you'd like to see us cover, um, or or just comments about some work that we've done. But it really helps us if you subscribe. Thank you, everyone who engaged today. We'll be back tomorrow, same time. I'll create the event page tonight so everyone knows. We're going to do the same thing, and we're going to finish off this first event. Again, thank you guys so much for engaging. Thanks, Sean. Thanks, Chad. Thanks to all of you who were really commenting a lot. Michael, um, yeah, you guys are great, and we will chat tomorrow, and hopefully some of you guys will jump on Skype and have a conversation. All right, let art and science inspire.